Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Rogue Core discussion video. I'm sure people are probably sick of this concept by now, but I do have a lot of things that I still want to talk about Rogue Core. Specifically, I want to try to address and talk about some of the things that people have been mentioning on the videos that I've put up regarding Rogue Core and answer some of the questions that people have either posed or some of the thoughts or comments that people have made regarding the relationship between Rogue Core and normal Deep Rock, or just Ghost Ship's practice in implementing this game entirely, because a lot of people have different opinions and different ideas based on what this is going to mean for the series. Because even despite everything that has been going on and a lot of the DRG content creators talking about Rogue Core in relation to normal Deep Rock, people still seem to have a misconstrued idea as to what Rogue Core is going to do for the Deep Rock series going forward. And a lot of people are making assumptions to what Ghost Ship's practice and design is going to be in regards to Rogue Core versus Deep Rock support going forward. A lot of people think that Deep Rock is going to just be completely abandoned by the time Rogue Core comes out, or that the player base is going to get split. So I figured I might as well look into a couple of people's thoughts and give my own views and my own takes on what these particular ideas might be. It's not all going to be super serious. Some of this is pretty lighthearted. Some of these are just cool ideas that people have posed. And if you guys like this type of video, be sure to let me know in the comments by liking and considering subscribing. But let's get into the video. Whenever Rogue Core releases, I hope we can see the space rig from the ramrod, and on Deep Rock, the ramrod from the space rig. That would be really cool. I would really like to see that kind of merging of the two hub worlds. I feel like it would make a lot of sense, especially if the ramrod is going to Hoxus. That would be a really nice little Easter egg to be able to see each individual hub area from the other one, and maybe if you look at it, your character has some sort of unique dialogue where they reference the other dwarves. I do think that would be kind of cool. I definitely don't like how you take turns picking stuff. Seems like an unnecessary headache. If everyone got their own instance of items, you could upgrade luck stats independently to give more players choice. So that is the concept of a co-op roguelike, my friend. The idea is that this is supposed to be something that you go in with full cooperation with your teammates. These types of games, you really do need to have a lot of cohesion with the people that you go through. And I think that's something that a lot of people are going to struggle with, not even necessarily in the Deep Rock community. Just in general, players like to play for themselves. They don't like to play for the team, regardless of what game it is. So I think that's something that people are definitely going to have to come to terms with something like this, because Deep Rock, it is very much individualized in terms of you being able to upgrade yourself, you being able to build yourself out. This is going to be very different. You are going to have to plan and think about the team as a whole. It is not just you that you are building anymore, it is your entire team. If there is something that you really want to pick upgrade-wise, but statistically and logically it would work better for your ally, you need to be the bigger player and say, I'm not going to take this because this will work way better for you. If, let's say, the cryo grenade is available for you to pick and it is insanely strong and you really want it, but your teammate is running a very powerful cryo-based build, you need to think to yourself, okay, as much as I want this, such and such can use this way more effectively than me. That's definitely something that a lot of people are going to have to get used to, especially when compared to normal Deep Rock, where that's not really an issue. But I do think that that's going to be a very good change, because it's going to make it so that way players have to think more about the team as a collective unit. The upgrade and weapon system is dumb as heck. Whoever goes first will have the best loadout, and the very last will have the literal trash. This again kind of echoes what I talked about just the last comment. You have to think more about the team than just yourself. It's not just about you anymore. And it's not even necessarily whoever goes first gets the best stuff. Whoever goes first has the easiest pick in terms of what it is that will help them, but they might not necessarily pick the best thing. They're probably going to pick the best thing for themselves, which might be the best thing that's available, or it might be something that isn't necessarily super obvious, but for them could be working out very well. There could be a legendary upgrade that gives you health every time you kill an enemy, which is incredibly strong, but they might take something in regards to fire damage just because they're making a fire-based build, and that would be much more powerful for them, which then leaves that available for you or somebody else to pick. Again, going back to what I said before, this is all about team coordination. That's one thing that people need to understand about this, is it is less about the individual and more about the team, which I know a lot of people struggle with that, but for me, as somebody who really loves these types of team-based co-op games, it's phenomenal to have them implement something like that, at least in my opinion. Yeah, it's gonna be rough, and yeah, you're going to have people who just purposely take the strongest things without consulting the team or without talking to people. Those kinds of things are just going to happen regardless of what. That even happens in normal Deep Rock. You have people who just basically think only about themselves, never revive, focus on just collecting minerals just for themselves, and that's essentially it. Honestly, they should make this a DLC for Deep Rock Galactic. Just have it selectable from the main menu without it interfering with the base game. Making this a separate game is only a few extra button presses, so I don't care much either way. So my question in response to that question is, what would that accomplish? If it's going to be a DLC that you get for the main game and you're going to have to pay money for it regardless, what is the difference between making it its own separate game versus a selectable game mode in the normal Deep Rock game that is going to function the exact same? It doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense as to why they would make this into a DLC if it's going to function vastly different from the normal game. The biggest and main thing that I keep hearing people say is, why not just make this a addition to normal Deep Rock like this comment is saying? But then that begs the question, what difference would that make if it's going to be the exact same thing? The only difference is that people are going to see when you load up on Steam that you're playing normal Deep Rock Galactic, and then you have to clarify, oh no, I'm playing the Rogue Core version. I'm playing the Rogue Core game mode. It's like, because they said that this is going to be a standalone full-blown game, people are upset about it. But if it was the exact same concept, the exact same thing, but then they just said, hey, it's going to actually be a DLC, you're still going to have to pay the same price for it, but it's just attached to the main game, people wouldn't care. But then at that point, what's the real difference other than the fact that it's attached to the main game? I get where people are coming from with this, but if they want to make something that is vastly different and uses framework and mechanics that normal Deep Rock just doesn't have or just doesn't utilize, it makes more sense to make it into a full-blown game. And keep in mind that everything in Rogue Core was supposed to be what Season 5 was supposed to be, but because it got way too different and way too separate from what normal Deep Rock is, that's why they made it into its full-blown own game. They might add a new mission to DRG after Rogue Core is out that is just rebuilding the broken down sites after the Reclaimers get their areas back. That would be kind of cool. I could definitely see a reconstruction or rebuilding mission type added into the game where you basically have to build up this almost like a on-site refining mission that kind of just mines itself or something along those lines. I feel like that would be a very interesting concept. Again, the fact that they are releasing Rogue Core means that they are opening the gates for a lot of new things to be potentially added into Deep Rock, both related to Rogue Core and not. So we could definitely see a new mission type added in at some point that is something in lieu of that. And especially keep in mind that up until now, each season has kind of been done in a two-part series, at least in terms of story. The first two seasons were rival themed, the second two seasons were Rockpox themed, and this is kind of the beginning of the core theme, I guess is the way you could call it. So it's very possible that season 6 is also going to have something to do with that. So this would make a lot of sense in all honesty. I really love the looks of Rogue Core, but I wish there were more frequent updates to DRG. One of the best multiplayer games in my opinion, but one update a year is so frustrating. Imagine the core biome in DRG or the Edge Stalker. I'm so full of ideas and probably 50% of them would actually fit into DRG very well. That's like 5 seasons worth of content planned out. Why don't we get new seasons every 3 to 5 months? 12 is way too long. That's echoing what a lot of people are feeling, and honestly, I do agree to an extent that 12 months in between each individual update is a long time. But again, keep in mind that Ghost Ship is not the biggest game development company that's out there. They're relatively small compared to many other game companies that are out there, AAA or even AA. Still very weird to say a AA company. I'm not used to saying that. I don't even know if that's an official term yet. I think instead of thinking about it in a negative sense, as that we are only getting an update every 12-ish months in between the work with Rogue Core and other things, is to think about the fact that despite the fact that we have these very long gaps in between updates, the game is still incredibly healthy and there is still a ton of people playing it and coming back to it day after day after day. There's very few other games out there that have that much of a gap in between big content releases that still have incredibly good turnouts when it comes to players. It just doesn't happen that often in the gaming scene, and the fact that we have something like this that is able to keep bringing players back despite the fact that they have to wait a while for big, massive content updates is rather impressive when compared to a lot of other games out there. Yes, definitely a lot of the stuff from Rogue Core can be added into Deep Rock, and I'm sure that once the game gets fully fleshed out, it will definitely be added in some way, shape, or form, at least some of it. I don't think all of it, but at least a decent amount of it will probably work its way in eventually. And another thing people have to remember is that this happens in both directions. When Season 5 was in full production, Rogue Core was not worked on at all. So it's mainly just a fact of manpower. They have worked on Season 5 for a long time, and that really put a pause on Rogue Core, hence why we didn't really see anything besides that first initial trailer. And now it's the other way, which we knew going into it for a while. They had said this multiple times on live streams and they're on the horizons. They had basically mentioned that when Season 5 was done and Rogue Core was in full production, that DRG was not going to go on pause or on hiatus, but that content was going to slow down even more so than normal because they are putting all of their manpower towards that. Rogue Core lets them cook with new ideas and systems that DRG would not be able to use due to balance. I do hold hope that some of the new concepts like enemies, environments, etc. can be implemented into DRG in some way. Yeah, similar to what I was just talking about, there are certain ways and certain mechanics that Rogue Core is implementing that just straight up will not work in normal Deep Rock. It will not work. And a lot of people have even mentioned, even the comments that we read earlier, have pointed to people not liking those particular styles. And that's the reason why they're making it its own separate game, is because if they just straight up implement this system into normal Deep Rock, that is going to shun more people away than if they make it into its own separate title. The heavy roguelike elements, the random generations, the build as you go sort of style just does not fit well into the normal DRG environment. People who say they want it to be added in as a normal game mode, yeah, it could be added in as a normal game mode, but the people who are saying that would just not play it. It's just not for them. It is not the game mode that they want to say, as we have had proof of in the past. So instead, this makes it a way that they can experiment and try out new things that Rogue Core can use in a vacuum because it's different from Deep Rock. And depending on how many things could potentially carry over or bleed over, they could do that as well. So this next guy has a very long and very informative comment that I think kind of summarizes and articulates what a lot of people are thinking in regards to the Rogue Core versus normal Deep Rock situation that people are thinking is going on. So I'm going to read through it. It's a little bit long-winded, so bear with me on this. I think it mostly boils down to the fact that DRG hit peak during Season 5's release. Ghost Ship has something really special in DRG, and while normally we applaud taking risks since the gaming industry has become really sterilized, DRG is one of the few live service games with an amiable development team and community, as well as having an insanely satisfying gameplay loop. Risking years of neglect in the base game with the potential of a fun side grade experience with similarities yet many differences is a big risk. I wish at least there was like a skeleton crew working on the base DRG or something. Spoiler alert, there is. Rogue Core probably won't be the end of mainline DRG's content, but it signals that the game is no longer their top priority. The game is kind of being sunsetted just without turning off the server since everyone is still playing it. I do definitely think lots of people will still be here for Season 6, but a not insignificant amount of people will have become pretty bored of the stagnation in the game over time. I already took long breaks from DRG in between major updates, and I suspect that another long one may be coming up soon because it's going to be a real long time before we get any new relevant content for DRG proper. I think that particular huge comment, which was very well done and incredibly informative, definitely does summarize a lot of people's worries and concerns in terms of the content that happens with Deep Rock normally in comparison to what's going to happen when Rogue Core does eventually come out. While I do disagree on a couple of big points in regards to that particular comment, number one, I don't think that DRG is in any way, shape, or form leaving Ghost Ship's top priority because they wouldn't have Rogue Core if it wasn't for Deep Rock. It's just like, that's just how it is. They would not have this if Deep Rock was not as successful as it was. So I still think it's definitely their top priority. I don't think it's getting sunsetted in any way, shape, or form. It's just literally on pause. And I think a big thing to keep in mind with this, which this might just be because of me, because I have really bad ADHD, is that I think people need to understand that Deep Rock is not necessarily a game that you need to know life for your entire existence. You can go between it and other games whenever you want. It's not meant to be something that you spend hundreds and hundreds of hours every single week grinding out and playing. It's not meant to be something that they want to consume your life and everything in turn is revolving around it. As somebody who does pride themselves on being a Deep Rock content creator, there are still times where I just really don't feel like playing Deep Rock from time to time. Sometimes I just get bored of it. Sometimes I just want to play something else for a while. I always come back to play it at some point in time within the week or, within a couple of days really. But there are times where like just the grind just isn't there, and that's okay. People have to understand that it is okay to have lulls in a game that you like because it just gives you the opportunity to play other things. While yes, of course, you definitely want to be able to come back to something and you don't want something to be so barren that you never feel like you want to come back, but I don't feel like Deep Rock is in that particular situation. I do feel like there's always something coming out at some point in time in the future to look forward to. There's a seasonal event. There could be maintenance updates that could potentially happen, or we again have seasons to come out with every year. I think that a lot of the people that are upset, and I'm not necessarily talking about this person who made the comment, because I don't obviously want to assume, but I think a lot of the people who are getting upset about this are the people who, for lack of a better term, basically complete a particular season's worth of content within the course of a couple weeks and then just have nothing to do for the next however many months. And while it's great that you have that kind of time and effort to put into something, not necessarily what the devs want you to do. They want it to be something to where you are consistently playing, you are going through at your own pace. They don't want you to have to burn through everything within the span of a week or so. And talking about neglecting the base game for a potential fun side grade experience, I think that there are a lot of examples of times where going for a side experience actually turns out very well for a particular series. And in fact, we have another comment that happened a little bit earlier that mentions something of this same exact similar regard. Honestly, this has always happened. After Halo 3, when both Halo ODST and Halo Reach came out, there was a massive backlash from the fans. This game doesn't have Master Chief in it, I'm not buying that, was a pretty common sentiment. And now looking back, those two games are considered great, if not some of the best in the series. Give this game a chance and then judge after, not before. I think that is a very wise thing to say and 100% true. As somebody who played a lot of Halo, I will say that ODST is still, in my opinion, in my top 3 of favorite Halo games out there. And again, it was a side project. It wasn't something that was supposed to be a mainline game. It was something that was completely separate from it. And Reach as well is my top #1 Halo game that's out there. And it didn't have anything to do with Master Chief. It didn't have anything to do with the mainline story of Halo. Instead, it was something completely different. It was something that the development team decided to experiment with. And that, I think, is something that we need to take into consideration. While yes, the gameplay was very similar in pretty much every regard, still the fact that the vibe and the feel was very different was enough to drive people away, not realizing that it was going to be some of the best choices the company had ever made when it came to making Halo games. And I think that we need to kind of have that same sort of thought process when talking about Deep Rock versus Rogue Core, because there's going to be a big difference and a big shift between the two of them. And for all we know, just like with the Halo franchise, this might spawn some of the best things that the Deep Rock franchise could ever possibly come up with. So again, kind of like he said, or she, I don't want to assume, give the game a chance and judge it after, not before it comes out. They could have avoided this if they had waited until they had hired enough people to work on the two games simultaneously. DRG really has reached some level of mainstream success. Kneecapping its momentum just as people are discovering it was a really dumb move. They deserve the criticism. Well, first of all, I don't think they kneecap anything. Deep Rock's momentum is still going very strong. People are discovering it every single day. More and more people are figuring out about the game, either through word of mouth or any other sense. Just because the content is a little bit dry right now isn't going to stop people from discovering it. If anything, I feel like people are hopping onto the game now more than ever, just because it's significantly more easy to do whatever it is that you want to do with the season switching, with being able to essentially work on whatever you want. So I definitely disagree with the sentiment that they are kneecapping the momentum of Deep Rock, because it's still going strong. It's just a case of there's not currently any new stuff coming out. To a new player who is discovering it, there is still 5 seasons worth of stuff for them to go through, which is a lot of stuff. Not only that, but the fact that Deep Rock has such a very good business practice to the point where they don't nickel and dime you like crazy. You just have to buy the game. You just have to buy the game. You don't have to pay for the seasons. The only thing you have to pay for is cosmetics, which is a phenomenal business practice, but at the same time, that's only going to get you so far in terms of actually being able to provide for the game itself. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a double-edged sword, because a person can only buy Deep Rock Galactic so many times before it starts to get crazy. Yes, you can gift it for your friends or whatever the case may be, but essentially once all people have the game, then they can't make any more money off of it. And the old adage, you need to spend money to make money, is kind of a big thing with this particular situation, because obviously as a company, they want to succeed and they want to be successful and they want to keep making more Deep Rock related content. So that requires them to take risks like this, as we mentioned before. I definitely agree with the notion that Deep Rock has really reached some mainstream success, especially in terms of comparing it to where certain AAA titles are at these days. But I don't think that just having a halt on content for the time being is going to really make it suffer in the sense that some people are worried about. I think that more or less they're giving people time to finally work on things at a good pace base and allowing people to get anything that they want without the risk of having new stuff come out that's going to take up their time. A bit of a backseat, I'd say that no new content in 1.5 to 2 years is abandonment. Sounds like there is intent to go back to DRG eventually, but an almost 2-year break from DRG is way too long. As I said before, take care of what pays your bills. Don't leave your game that's paying your bills unattended. That is not good for business. While yes, that is a perfectly valid criticism, another thing that you have to keep in mind is, again, similar to what I just said, eventually the well of normal Deep Rock is going to run dry. Eventually you are just not going to be able to make profit off of it. Eventually you are not going to be able to pay your bills off of it because everybody already has the game, so no more sales for the game are going through. It's crazy to me when people think that developing a game is the easiest thing in the world, especially on a big scale. Granted, I'm sure it's not the hardest thing in the world in today's day and age with a lot of tools and a lot of guides and stuff out there, but it is still a long process, and for a team that is not the biggest development team in the world to do that takes time. It takes effort, it takes money, it takes time investment. It is a huge project to do something like that, and it is going to unfortunately put a pause on any other project that you are currently working on. Again, it does not mean it is abandonment. I completely disagree with the notion that Deep Rock Galactic is abandoned at this point. I will stand on that hill that DRG is not abandoned by the devs in any way, shape, or form. Is it paused? Yes, it is incredibly paused right now because they are working on a brand new project, and that is okay. That is 100% okay because, again, as I said earlier, some risks need to be taken in order to do something that could potentially lead to the betterment of whatever the IP is that you're working on. While yes, playing it safe is definitely the most logical thing to do, at the end of the day, the devs want to do their own thing. They want to make something that is new, that is different, that is separate from normal Deep Rock. They're going to do that. I think the main gist that I'm getting from looking at what everybody's saying is that everyone is coming from a place of sound criticism and argument, and I'm not here to knock or judge anybody for their views. Everything that we've read today is perfectly valid and sound, and I completely get where people are coming from. I do, however, think that a little bit of it is misguided in the sense that people need to understand what this could potentially mean for the future of the Deep Rock franchise in general. You need to take risks in some ways if you want your company and your product to succeed in whatever way that might entail. While I definitely do not think that Deep Rock is going anywhere anytime soon, especially the main game, I do think that Rogue Core is going to open up a huge amount of potential for new people to get into the game because it is a completely separate genre, and for a lot of fresh gameplay and mechanics to be introduced to the series that could potentially make their way into the base game as well. And a tad bit unrelated, but a big thing that I'm getting when reading a lot of these things, not even just the ones that I talked about, but ones that I've read going through videos in my spare time, is that I think people need to find more things to play in their spare time. Not trying to obviously shun away from Deep Rock because it's still one of my favorite games and I'm still going to play it until the day I die practically. But it is okay to take breaks from things from time to time. A game does not need to necessarily consume every waking aspect of your life, and it does not need to be something that you invest a crazy amount of time into every single day in order to feel like it is still valid. You can play something hyper casually and it still be very good. That's one of the things that I really like, and I know I've mentioned this a couple times on the channel, but that I really enjoy about Warhammer 40k Space Marine. The devs have basically gone on record saying that they don't want their game to be something in which you feel like you need to play all the time every single day in order to feel like you're progressing and that you're actually getting stuff. You play at your own pace, you take breaks whenever you want. It's not something that you feel as though you need to dump dozens of hours a day into in order to feel like you're making progress. You play it when you want, and if you're not feeling like it, come back to it later and there's more stuff to do. And I think that that's kind of the mindset that people need to have with Deep Rock, is not to obviously not abandon it, but it's okay to take a break every now and then. And for a lot of people, chances are that break is happening right now. And that's okay. It is okay to take a little breather from something from time to time. All in all, as I've said several times on this channel, I think Rogue Core is going to be phenomenal. I personally cannot wait for it. I think it is going to be a great breath of fresh air in the Deep Rock franchise. I think that it is not going to split the player base. I think that it is going to instead just expand the player base to people who are more fans of roguelike and more randomly generated content, because at the end of the day, you're still going to be able to play normal DRG whenever you want, however you want, for as much as you want, and now you're just going to have something else that you're going to be able to play as well. Well, that was a fun time. I'm sure I made a lot of people happy, and I definitely have not made mortal enemies of anybody watching this video. If you guys want to leave your own comments that are of course going to be very polite and civil down in the comments section below, letting me know how, of course, happy and excited you are for Rogue Core's release and definitely nothing else. And as a fun little test to see if you've gotten this far into the video, let me know what your favorite season is down below. Let me know what your favorite season that has happened in Deep Rock up until this point is and why. Also, be sure to check out the other Rogue Core videos I've done on the channel, as I will probably do a couple more before the game actually comes out. And as always, I hope you found this video informative and entertaining. If you did, please be sure to let me know by hitting that like button and consider becoming a member and subscribing today, as it really helps me out a lot. Rocket Stone Miners, I'll see you in the next video.